How did we, a young family from Northumberland, come to be on board this luxury liner, en route to a distant continent to start a new life? The decision to emigrate from England to Australia is not an easy one to make. It means leaving friends and family and leaving the country in which you were born. Do I think I've done a wise thing? Ask me in 10 years' time when the bairns are leaving school and I'll tell you.
Matt Dickinson, en route for Melbourne. Many of the migrant ships are luxury liners, with everything free except drinks at the bar. The 5-week voyage to Australia is like a holiday cruise. At the equator, Matt Dickinson and his family enjoy the traditional crossing the line ceremony.
The children were amazed by the sight of Neptune's court and the antics of the crew and the normally staid passengers. The sight of big-built Scotchmen in brassiers and small-built lasses in oversized men's pants is really quite funny. All the bairns got a real ducking by Neptune's helpers, and I got my share.
After 5 long weeks, they arrive in their new home. Entering Sydney Harbour, Marjorie Black.
Everyone held their breath. My first view of Australia. The sun was brilliant and warm, blue sky and sparkling water. Most people were impatient to get ashore, but I was a little frightened.
A ship's welfare officer calms the growing fears.
We had to tell them that kangaroos wouldn't be jumping down the streets. A couple of elderly ladies were scared stiff that there would be nothing but hordes of aborigines to greet them.
I felt a pang of despair that I could never cope in this strange place, and that the whole trip was a mistake.
On arrival, families are sent to government hostels. From London, 17-year-old Susan Jenkins.
When we got out of the bus at the hostel and saw all these huts, we felt like we'd arrived at some sort of concentration camp. Our first reception in Australia. Then there were these people talking in really strong Australian accents. I didn't like it at all. It was a dreadful place. I began to think I'd spend the rest of my days in this tin hut thing.
But most migrant families soon find homes in the suburbs and begin the search for work. Manual jobs are plentiful. Matt Dickinson was a grocer in Northumberland. In Australia, he finds work with a railway gang.
You have no idea what a relief this new start is. I drew my first pay on the 24th of January. It was £19.06 for the week. My last pay in England was £7.06.
19-year-old Duncan Fisher works in a foundry in Western Australia.
There's a certain amount of hostility at work towards POMs. They say things like, the only good POM is a bloody dead POM, that sort of thing. It's taken me a long time to work out how the Australian mind works. The word bastard is a term of endearment. For instance, bloody POM or bloody pommy is an insult, but pommy bastard is okay.
Australia welcomes 100,000 European immigrants a year. but refuses entry to almost all non-white applicants. The government imposes a policy known as White Australia, which even discriminates against those of Commonwealth origin. Australian Secretary of Immigration, Peter Hayden.
Only those applicants who can be regarded as being of European origin may be permitted to settle in Australia. Australians are nervous about minorities who form ethnic colonies in our cities.
The White Australia policy provokes strong opposition from Britain and the Commonwealth. In a letter to the Times, Sally Shan from London.
It's all wrong for Australia to bar immigrants from coloured Commonwealth countries. India is overpopulated and starving, and yet when Australia needs immigrants, it goes to Germany and Greece. A few years ago, the Germans were hated all over the world. Now they're welcomed in Australia.
But it isn't just would-be immigrants who are affected by the concept of a White Australia. For decades, Australia's indigenous population, the Aborigines, have suffered racial discrimination, the removal of their homelands, and the destruction of their traditional way of life. Auburn Neville, Commissioner for Native Affairs, 1937.
The problem is one that will eventually solve itself. There are a great many full-blooded Aborigines. They are not getting enough food, and they're being decimated by their own tribal practices. In my opinion, no matter what we do, they will die out.
The population of so-called full-blood Aborigines is rapidly being outnumbered by those of mixed descent. It is planned that eventually all will be absorbed into white society. For 40 years, the government follows a policy of assimilation. Many children identified as of mixed descent are removed from their families and placed with white foster parents or in church missions and orphanages run by whites.
We have the power to take any child from its mother at any stage of its life. I have no wish to break up families, but other aspects must be considered besides sentiment. We must weed out the light-coloured children.
In 1949, Millicent is taken from her family.
I was so afraid and unhappy. I didn't understand what was happening. I was 4 years old. That night we would cry ourselves to sleep. It was the last time I was to see my parents.
Tens of thousands of children, both those identified as full-blood and those of mixed descent, have been sent to institutions for assimilation. Many are subjected to brutal treatment. Philip Prosser.
Every little thing you did was a sin, and you were punished. They hit you with anything they could get hold of. I was accused of something I hadn't done, and was given 6 across my arms, and flogged from my shoulders down to my legs.